Let's talk a little bit more Big 12 at this point in the season with Brandon Marcello. He is the national college football reporter for CBS Sports, and he's good enough to join us here on Sons of UCF Live. Brandon, welcome in.
How are you? How are you guys?
Doing well. I've been thinking as I learned that you would be with us this week, how do you watch games on a Saturday? What's your Saturday look like?
If I'm here at home, not on the road traveling, usually I'm either on the back porch watching games and on the phone and texting people across the industry, or I'm upstairs. I've got, I'm looking right now, I've got a massive curved monitor. I've counted that with my TV in here in my office and this monitor, I can watch up to 9 games simultaneously.
And understand everything that's going on and make good notes.
Yeah, right. But, it's good to have just because, Twitter's the perfect spot for college football Saturdays because the reporters you follow are usually 30 seconds ahead of something. So if something big happens, I could just turn my head over to the feed or whatever. And by the time I see the tweet, that play's about to happen or whatever. So it's pretty good setup.
Couple weeks in, what do you make of the Big 12 so far? Anybody's league to win? Maybe even UCF after their come from behind win at TCU.
Yeah, that game at TCU was wild. I'd say it's pretty wide open among 4 teams probably right now. If I had to guess, we're going to learn a lot obviously this weekend with Utah and Oklahoma State going at it. Kansas State to me maybe looks like the favorite. After their performance last week against Arizona, it seems like Avery Johnson is just really coming along very well in that offense. They've got 2 really dynamic running backs. Their defense was pretty good against Arizona, all things considered, with their passing offense. But, the veteran teams in the Big 12 are kind of the ones everybody just kind of saw as the favorites. And we're seeing the 2 most veteran teams go against each other this weekend in Stillwater. And but it is still crazy to me that, with Cam Rising, with his hand issue, we're still not clear if he's actually going to play at Oklahoma State. And if he doesn't play, that changes everything I'm expecting out of that game. I think Oklahoma State wins, but if Utah ends up putting Cam Rising out there, I think it's going to be a tight game that Utah may end up coming out on top. But if Rising plays, I don't think I don't think Utah has a really good shot at beating them. Their offense is very stagnant without him.
Brandon, for the first couple of weeks of the season, it seems like the knock on the Big 12 is a lot of really good teams, maybe no great teams. With the loss of Texas and Oklahoma, does the Big 12 have an identity crisis? Does they have a crisis of sort of who that leading team is, or who kind of the bell cow of the conference is?
Maybe so. And then that's just something that's got to work itself out, not this season, but probably the next 2 or 3 years. And that's kind of what happens whenever any conference loses their, as you say, bell cows. Everybody's going to be fighting for that top spot. But having said that, before the last couple of years, it wasn't Texas really doing anything. And OU was off and on. And it was TCU. It was Oklahoma State. It was Kansas State. Heck, even Baylor. And so I think if you follow the Big 12 closely enough, that the conference is still very strong. Still got some very good teams. I'm just not sure if we have a team in the Big 12 as they're playing right now that is like a deep, dark threat, like in a playoff field that can make a big run. There's some inconsistencies there. We talked about Oklahoma State earlier. I'm deathly afraid of picking them in a big game right now after I saw what they did against Arkansas because of they looked lost for a half of football there. And also Ollie Gordon, he, as of going into last week, was averaging 3 yards a carry, if that. Some interesting things there to keep an eye on, especially behind an Oklahoma State offensive line that is the oldest in college football when you combine their ages. They're averaging 26 of age or something crazy like that. So there's some opportunities here. And I think you got to start looking at schedules among all these teams, the threats out there, UCF included in that, to kind of see how things stack up there and who might end up being, quote unquote, the freshest team and who's got the most advantageous schedules when we get down in November.
Brandon, 2 years in of UCF being in the Big 12, how do you think they fit into this conference? Obviously, it changed from year 1 to year 2 with the addition of the 4 corner schools. But how do you think UCF has fit into this Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, how many teams did we have in new conferences last year? There was a lot, like maybe like 7, something like that. I can't remember. I wrote a story about it back in summer, so I should remember it. But out of all the new schools in the new conferences, UCF had the best record out of any of them. So UCF, despite end up finishing with a quote unquote losing season, had the best year out of all the new teams in their new conferences. It's very tough to move into a new conference, no matter the level, but especially when you are bumping up to a power conference, right? But UCF has been preparing itself for that. Obviously, with the recruiting's been substantially better. You've seen the best recruiting classes in school history there, but that's got to continue to get on the uptick. You got to have like top 20 type classes to win the Big 12 year after year after year and contend. And I think Gus Malzahn's done a very good job of stockpiling talent there. I mean, especially offensively, it's electric. It's incredible, as you guys know, and what they've got there. But they got to play consistent football. They can't be cold for 4 straight possessions or whatever and expect to do what they did against TCU this past week, which is, again, impressive. But you can't play games like that week to week to week and win a championship.
UCF on the bye week, they welcome in Colorado. What do you make of what you've seen so far from Coach Prime and the Buffaloes?
It looks like more of the same from last year to a certain extent. You've got 2 of the better players in all of college football, and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, and then just a cast of characters around them that have come in from other power programs, some not power programs, and they're still trying to figure each other out, trying to gel and everything. It's a work in progress this season. I do think they're a better team than they were last year. It's just that they can't really run the ball effectively. They finally got something going there on the ground against Colorado State, but Colorado State certainly looks like they may have taken half step back from what they were last year in a Big 12 game, right? We haven't seen that really in quite some time, and that's a huge game down in Orlando, and one that I know Gus Malzahn's had circled on his calendar for quite some time. I remember back in the spring or something like that, he's like, hey, because I've come to
Gainesville. What do you make of the state of play in the state of Florida? Florida State certainly struggling. Little resurgence from Miami. Opportunity here for UCF over these next 2 to make a statement.
Gigantic. I mean, that's even compared to a couple of years ago when they won the bowl game, it's a bigger opportunity because they're going in the swamp, and that place is in disarray, as we all know. Billy Napier might not be the coach at that point in the season.
What's the date you have in the pool for Billy Napier? Do you have October 6th or before?
We've done some reporting on this. We got a story coming out tomorrow about kind of what's going on behind the scenes there. So I hate to be like a shill there before we
shill away
watch it, it'll be up Friday morning, mid-morning. But listen, I mean, if Billy Napier in Florida lose on the road to Mississippi State this week, I think he's gone by Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
The next day. I don't see how you keep that going, and especially because Florida will be going into a bye week after the Mississippi State game. So you give yourself an opportunity there to restructure the staff, figure out who the interim coach is going to be, rally the players around, and start formalizing a new plan and working on things in the bye week before you have a huge game against UCF. Also, if you were to lose to Mississippi State and you keep them around, you're just saving yourself up for more embarrassment and the potential for fans to not be riled up and showing up to the game against UCF. And for that matter, I don't think fans, or excuse me, the administration there would probably want Florida fans in their own stadium booing every time they make one small mistake, even if it's not, allowing a touchdown, because that's what's going on in Gainesville right now. They're finding any little thing to boo about. And I think just to keep the fans happy, they're going to have to probably make a move soon. I mean, even an uninspired effort at Mississippi State with a win, I wouldn't discount anything happening there, any decisions being made that lead to Napier's ouster sooner rather than later. But it certainly seems inevitable. I mean, they would have to go on a amazing run, one for the ages, I think, to save Billy Napier.
You've been covering Gus for a long time, Brandon. Obviously, you saw him in his Auburn days. How was and you to your point, you were embedded with UCF for a story that you did a while back. How is the Gus we see now at UCF different than the Gus you saw at Auburn?
Much more tightly wound at Auburn. I mean, this is a guy that every corner he turned around, he had to look out at Auburn with boosters and all that, but also just the fans. And it was a job. I mean, fans expect a lot of UCF too, but like that's a place where you've got Nick Saban in your own backyard and you have to worry about what he's doing every day. And also you're trying to compete against him and supplant him every single day in the operations you do. So it's very, very difficult. I mean, even small things I would notice, like, Gus, I don't know what he does now. I'm sure he's probably gone back to, he's just more free now, but he'd always wore a visor, right? Well, I remember he started just wearing a hat, and I was all like, what the hell is that all about? Why did you get rid of your trademarked visor? And he said, well, one of my daughters said that they could see my bald spot here. And so I started wearing a hat. I'm all like, what do you care? Who cares, man? Why are you caring about that? And then he goes to UCF, stops dyeing his hair. He's got the gray hair, flowing and everything. He seems loose. I mean, he's inviting people like me to come down and be embedded with the program. Just like, hey, have at it, man. Go at it. Go to every single meeting you want to, report on it. I don't care. Gus is a much more confident coach, I think, today than what he was at times at Auburn. I will say this, at Auburn, there were some years, especially the years he knew that they were really good, he was really confident. He'd go in and be telling people, man, we're going to win this many games. We're going to do this and that. And at UCF, I think that he's kind of in a lot of ways found that swagger, but he's older now. So he's a grandpa now. So he's almost just got like this, like freewheeling, like post-retirement grandpa vibe going on with him. Like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. This stuff's fun. Let's have fun out there. Let's not worry about everything and what's coming around the corner every single week. And I like that type of Gus Malzahn. That's the type of Gus Malzahn that I knew when he was coming up through the high school ranks as a head coach. And at UCF, I think in a lot of ways it's revitalized him because, man, that Auburn job really, I think, really beat him down those last couple of years.
Well, we wouldn't be fans if there wasn't a conspiracy theory always lurking, Brandon. And it doesn't take much for folks to see what's happening at Arkansas. Sam Pittman has not had a great run of things. We know Arkansas is obviously native to Gus Malzahn. Is UCF Gus's last stop? Do you see any situation where Gus maybe moves on from UCF to something else?
No, I don't think so. Like if the Arkansas job were to open, I don't think Arkansas, there'd be enough support to hire him, because there's enough boosters in Arkansas, especially in pretty much everywhere across the state, that just don't want to hire him because they see him as someone that's spurred them before. And also he was there previously when they had Darren McFadden and Felix Jones for 1 year. And there was just all this drama that wasn't Gus's fault. And a lot of Arkansas fans just don't like going back to quote unquote retreads, even though he's not a retread. He's never been your head coach. He's only an OC there for a year. And that was 20 years ago almost now. But listen, Gus was up for that Arkansas job back in, what year was that? 2017, I think. And I was convinced he was leaving Auburn for Arkansas. From talking to people I knew at Arkansas, Auburn was going to the SEC championship game that year. They had beaten both Georgia and Alabama and did so in impressive fashion and went to the SEC championship game. But Auburn was really hobbled. They had their star running back. They tried to play him, but he couldn't really go full speed, and Georgia beat him. And I was convinced that was his last game. I thought he was going to probably take the Arkansas job. And I remember I even followed him with my iPhone, taping him as he was coming off the field like this. I'm taping his final walk as the Auburn coach. But he didn't take it. And didn't necessarily surprise me. I just thought that he would go, you know what? I think I've probably done everything I can at Auburn at this point. He had detractors even still, despite taking them to an SEC championship game for a second time in 4 years or whatever. And, the pull of going back home to your home state, a place that he played. And by the way, he played for Arkansas as a walk-on, And if you guys ever run into him, ask him about the jersey he wore at the Liberty Bowl for them. They misspelled his name on the back nameplate. It says Malzahn. He's still got it. He's still got it in his closet. But I think time's moved on. I mean, but not to say, like, if Arkansas were to be real serious about trying to come after him, I would think he'd have to think about it. But he's got a good thing going at UCF. So why go start over again, even if it's back home? I think he feels really good about how he's been building that thing there at UCF. And that's a long-winded way to say, but I like providing like some of these behind-the-scenes background stuff about him. And I don't think he'd leave in the end. I think he very much sees UCF as his last spot.
Yeah, I was going to transition to that. In these parts, you'll hear the name Bobby Bowden, right? And the talk of being with a program and taking it to another level. In your conversations with him, do you get the sense that he sees that? I mean, he's always talking about the future of college football, and he has been trying to build this. The recruiting classes have been strong, portal class this year, and there's that opportunity to really put UCF in that big four in the state of Florida.
Yeah, real quick, the chat room right there, Matt Dolan, perfect way to say that. Scott Frost regrets going home every day. Went to Nebraska and that thing blew up. And Scott Frost is a good coach. Just didn't work out in Nebraska. But yeah, listen, everything that Gus has said publicly, he says privately too. He legit thinks that place is just a gold mine, and it's the future of college football because of the enrollment there, the amount of the alumni base. And as you guys know, the alumni base is one of the youngest in the country, and it's actually just getting younger every year because there's so many kids graduating there from every year. It actually drops the median age down. But 5, 10, 15 years down the line, a lot of those alums are going to be in their 40s, their 50s, and they've hit it big at some point. They got their first kind of big egg, and they're going to be looking to spend it. And I think UCF's got a very great opportunity to capitalize on that. It's not where they want it to be now, but down the road, because of just that huge alumni base, and if you are successful in football and some other programs, they'll tap into that and they'll cash in. I mean, UCF, out of all the programs of the Big 12, when you talk about I say SMU, but SMU's in the ACC, but like,
that sounds funny, doesn't it?
It does. But when I think of schools that are kind of, on that level, new schools that have gone to power conferences. UCF's the one that's set up the best by far for where they're going to be potentially 5 to 10 years from now, just from their booster support.
How have you enjoyed your time at UCF when you've been to games? You've traveled all over the country. You've seen games in a lot of great venues. How does it feel to be at a UCF game?
The bounce house is awesome. I was there for, I think, Gus's debut against Boise State on Thursday night.
Thursday night, Friday morning.
Yeah, that was difficult.
I remember seeing you in the press box, and you're like, "Oh my God, is it 2 a.m?
It's 2 a.m. Let's go." And then
you had a flight. I talked to you. You were going right from UCF to the airport because you had an early morning flight. You thought you'd get some sleep. You were wrong.
I'm going to tell you, I can't tell you how many road trips end up being like that. It's like, you know what? I'm going to book the earliest flight out so I can get home. And it's like, well, game's going overtime or something's happening or there's a press box issue. But yeah, it's an impressive venue. I would like to be there when it's like a night game against a conference opponent. I haven't seen that yet. And every
box shakes.
Yeah,
you'll see your bottle of water.
That's what I hear. So that's why they call it the bounce house. But the only other times I've been around UCF, I've been holed up in the meeting rooms in the dark. Embedded with the team. So like you don't get the experience Orlando other than going out for a jog around campus, which is beautiful, by the way, fantastic campus. And, like last year I was with the team. I even got on the team airplane to go to Kansas State. And I'll say that like I'm going off the rails here, but like, man, you guys just don't know how much work these kids and the coaches put in every single freaking day. I don't know how they do it and continue to live and breathe. I mean, flew to Kansas State with them, right? And it's great having a direct flight on a team plane and getting to police escort in. So much better than as a media member or a fan when you have to sit in traffic.
Yeah, I went on that trip and landed in Kansas City and drove 110 miles.
We landed in Manhattan, baby, and we thought we were going to have to land, I think, at Topeka, but they ended up saying this runway was open so we could go. So it was great. But, the game ends at Kansas State, and it's like, I don't even know what it was, like 9 or 10 o'clock. Everything in the locker room, get all that together, and everybody's packing everything up, and the equipment crews, I can't believe the job they do. Just like they're flipping a house, in 10 minutes, and get on the bus to go to the airport, straight to the airport to get on the plane. And as soon as I got on the bus, Darren Henshaw is sitting near the front of the bus, and he's already got an iPad out, and he's grading film, looking at film. Going through it. And he had that iPad out and taking notes in addition to the other assistant coaches when they got on that bus, all the way from the time we got to the airport, then on the plane, then on the next bus to come back from the airport in Orlando to campus, all the way till 3:40 something in the morning when I got off the bus in Orlando. They were still looking at film and breaking stuff down, and they had to be back in at 7 in the morning to start planning for the next week. The amount of work that goes into that, and also that visit, it opened my eyes so much more to just how great of a tactician a guy like Gus is. He would sit in meetings and everything, and Darren would do this thing or whatever, and Gus would come sit next to me. And he'd whisper "This is going to be one of the big plays. You watch. We're going to hit it. We're going to pick it up. And we're going to hit it for big." There were 3 such plays that he mentioned to me during the week, and I would make notes all right, maybe watch this or whatever. And they're spitting out all this verbiage that I don't even understand. They're speaking a language I do not know because they're calling all these calls and sure enough, 3 of them were big plays that broke out. And I'm just the knowledge to be able to know ahead of time, we know this is going to work. They'd run that's one play, but they'd run it twice because they knew it was going to hit big at some point, and it did. It's incredible being around those type of football minds.
Brandon, what do you make of the rest of UCF schedule? Obviously, a tough game against Colorado, Florida. What's the ceiling for this UCF team in your mind?
Oh, that's a great question. I need to pull up the schedule. Give me 1 second.
We got Colorado, Florida, Iowa State, BYU, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Utah, if my memory has me correct.
Right. Utah's
Arizona,
November,
Arizona
right?
State. Yep.
Utah's the closer. That's right. And it's at home. So I look at it now, and I think Colorado game's a win. Give me 4. Florida's a coin toss.
Ooh.
I say that just because Florida might be recharged and ready to go if they have a new interim coach. Or they might be recharged even with the win against Mississippi State and got some confidence going, and they're fighting for Billy Napier or whatever. Who knows? That's a coin flip game. Cincinnati, that should be a win with the way they're playing. Iowa State's a loss. Iowa State's one of the most veteran teams in the country. Really love Matt Campbell. I think this is the year he probably ends up leaving and getting another job. That's just my opinion. BYU should be a win. So what are we up to now? I'm not even counting. Arizona in Orlando, coin flip game. I wonder if that team
Space game.
That's maybe like a coin flip game, because how are they reacting if they lose another game or two between now and then? Very talented, obviously, a quarterback and receiver. At Arizona State, that game's going to be fun, guys. You got Kenny Dillingham going against his former boss, and Kenny's got things going a little bit with their offensive line and their running game. Ooh, I don't know. I'm going to say that's a loss with the way Arizona State's playing right now and playing in the desert. West Virginia, coin flip. Utah, season kind of hinges on that in a lot of ways in the closer, about this being viewed as maybe like a special year. So you're probably looking, what is that, like
you have
9-3?
You had 2 losses and you had 3 coin flips in there.
Oh, 3 coin flips. How dare I? All right, I'll say this. Ceiling's 9-3 or 10-2. That's a ceiling.
A special season means the coin flips go your way, right?
Yeah, certainly. If coin flips go your way, you're probably a 1 or 2 loss team, for that matter. But
It could make that Utah game a lot of fun on that Friday night.
That could be the most meaningful game in UCF history, other than claiming the national championship. Because Big 12 championship game could be on the line, a spot in there. But here's the thing: like, we went into this season thinking the Big 12 was going to be the home of the the biggest, or I should say the closest games, and I wouldn't say it's kind of lived up to that so far, but at the very least, it's showing that the spread between a lot of teams isn't that far. So you got to really kind of keep your eyes on what's happening week to week and the injuries among all these teams going into it. But UCF offensively is as talented as anybody in the conference. You guys know that, and that puts you in position to win any of these games.
Brandon, what do we have to do to get RJ Harvey in the Heisman conversation? 448 yards through 3 games, 8 touchdowns. If my math is correct, and I was not a math major at UCF, but he's on pace for 1,800 yards, over 30 touchdowns. What do we have to do? And I'm sure he won't get there, by the way. But what do we have to do to get RJ Harvey in that Heisman conversation? He's got to have a big performance in a big game. That's what's got to happen. It's got to be against like a quote unquote name opponent, because that's what opens everybody's eyes on the national level. I mean, everybody's obsessed with Arch Manning, starting against ULM. You got to be a name, or you got to have a big performance in a big game. So look at some of the games on the schedule when we think of that. At Florida, if RJ Harvey goes in there and puts up 150, 160 yards and a win, that does it for you. That puts your name on the map. And for that matter, to a lesser extent, against Colorado here in a couple of weeks, if he puts big numbers against them, a lot of people are going to be watching that game. Casual fans, just fans of Dion and the Sanders family and Travis Hunter. And if RJ does that, they're like, who's this kid? So these next 2 games, big time opportunities, and they're at great opportunities because you're approaching the midway point of the season when we start kind of figuring out who our top 4 or 5 guys are in the Heisman race.
All right, when you come into UCF for a game, you're going to be in the press box for Colorado? Are you going to be over in Gainesville? Watch a game?
I don't know. I have nothing on the docket right now. In fact, my boss was asking me that I need to figure out my November travel. But I'm like, man, I'm supposed to go to Oregon, Ohio State in October 12th. And I don't know if that's going to be as big as of a game as everybody thinks, because Oregon's struggling a little bit. But hey, keep winning, Utah. That could be it. That could be the game. Very much so.
A little holiday weekend in Orlando for you.
Yeah, it's a Friday game too. Yeah.
Brandon Marcello covers college football for CBS Sports. Good enough to spend a half hour with us on Sons of UCF Live. We'll welcome you back anytime.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.